Dit is Amal Graafstra. Hij is biohacker en oprichter van Dangerous Things. Voor project 2 hebben wij hem geïnterviewd.
Yes, my name is Amal Graafstra, and I'm the founder of Dangerous Things. We work on implantable devices in the biohacking space, primarily the grinders subset, which is just simply, biohacking is a large amount of types of technology development. There's life hacking, there's 3D bioprinting, there's DNA hacking, and then there's grinders, which put devices meant to enhance human biology into the body. Dangerous Things is a company I started a couple years ago because in 2005 I implanted a RFID transponder in my hand to be able to access my home, start my car, that kind of thing. And it kind of generated some media attention, but between 2005 and about 2010 or so, the maker revolution kind of really started, and people started building things again and getting into hobbyist electronics, and so people really wanted to be able to experiment with implantable RFID and NFC transponders, but there really wasn't a good source for people to do that. So I started Dangerous Things to supply safe materials as well as safe procedures for installing them. Well, at the time, we have several products that we sourced, which are RFID transponders. But at the time, there was no NFC-compliant high-frequency RFID transponders that were also implantable or safe for implantation. So we basically went to Indiegogo, which is a crowdfunding system, and put together the manufacturing resources and put the project up on Indiegogo. And I had no idea it would actually succeed, but it succeeded rather well, up to 4 times the goal. So we produced the run of XNT transponders, which are NFC Type 2, and selling them now today on the site. Originally, we were just kind of selling low-frequency transponders, EM4102, 125 kilohertz, and those were okay because you can also buy very cheaply reader equipment, use it with an Arduino microcontroller, or there's USB readers you can buy very cheaply for your computer, but it doesn't really work with mobile phones. It's not NFC compliant. So we set up the crowdfunding campaign and started marketing it to hacker spaces and electronics hobbyist clubs, and people really got involved and backed the campaign. So we were able to raise enough to do a manufacturing run. Well, it depends on what you mean by living. We're literally operating Dangerous Things from my garage, so it's very much a startup. But the revenue is growing every month, and more people hear about it, and they understand immediately how they can use it in their own lives. So there's more and more people buying it. I think it's a good starting point, and we're going to work on new products that have more features and better support for a wider range of applications. No, this is final product. The XNT is fully finished. It's basically a transponder that comes preloaded in an injection assembly. That assembly is EO gas sterilized, and that's sold in a kit that you can buy online, retail, and take it to one of our piercing partners. So we don't really recommend that you do the installation yourself, but we also recognize the fact that doctors might not really want to assist. So we partner with professional body modification artists and piercers. They're familiar with working with needles and skin, and aseptic practice, which is making sure that it's clean and not getting infections, that kind of thing. So it's pretty straightforward to buy it and take it to a partner. So this is the full kit. It has the injector assembly here. It looks similar to this, but it's behind. It has skin prep, gloves, gauze, bandages, and a sterile drape, so you can set up a sterile field. to do the installation.
So basically everything you need.
Basically everything an experienced person would need, a piercer or a vet or a nurse or somebody with a steady hand would need to do it. There's definitely a difference between using a card or even a wearable or something that you carry with you that's temporary. When you do that, it's never really a part of you. It's always an extension that needs to be managed. So when you get up in the morning, you have to deal with your wallet, your keys, your phone, and many other things that you want to take with you. And a card would be one of them. So just like keys, you can leave the card at home, you can accidentally forget it, and the more integrated this technology becomes in your life, buying things at the vending machine, for example, when you don't have that or you forget it, the impact is much higher. So not only is the possibility of having your life interrupted by not having the device, the mental burden of ensuring that you always have it, the management burden of needing to remember it is high as well. So by implanting it, it becomes invisible. It becomes something that you don't think about, but it's always there. It's always available and accessible. So for me personally, I use keys, wallet, and phone. Those are my mental burdens that I have to remember every day when I wake up. And I was able to remove 1/3 of those of that mental burden. So I got rid of the keys, and I'm happier for it.
Okay, so it's mainly comfort.
It's comfort, but also just the idea that eventually the technology could evolve into something that's so tied to your biology that it enables you as a person to actually communicate with machines on a different level that's from carrying something that's temporary. I think NFC itself is interesting because it's a standard and it's being integrated into many different devices. Mobile phones, I think the City of Paris has a NFC kiosks so where you can interface with different parts of the city and learn about them. But as far as implanted devices go, NFC is really just the start. And as a passive device with no power source, probably the next stage would be something a little more heavy on crypto. So being able to use cryptology and cryptographic signatures, things like that, in the device is interesting because you'd be able to enable things that really do need security, like payment, transit tokens, that kind of thing. Beyond that, when we start getting into devices that are actively powered with a battery source, where you can actually interrogate other tags and vice versa, NFC peer-to-peer technology then becomes very interesting. So you would have a device that not only would be able to act as a security token and data sharing, but you could interact with another device or another token. So if we both had an active device and we met up and shook hands, we might be able to interrogate each other's devices and pass data that way.
Okay, so that's what they're working on right now? Or?
It's technically possible through NFC peer-to-peer, which is part of the NFC standard, but there are many hurdles to overcome to get to that point. Well, NFC as a technology is really interesting because it's all about contactless machine-to-machine communication, and that's inherently offline. So essentially letting passive devices, non-battery powered devices be accessible, integratable, and cheap. So for example, the common NFC applications are all of the different intent types and MIME types, so business cards and URLs and things like that. But really, when you kind of dig into it at a more technical level, it's really about having a ubiquitous machine, the smartphone, something that everybody has, and it's a very personal device. Everything that occurs on it is directly tied to the person. You get a message, on SMS or a text message that's a very personal interaction. So you have this kind of cybernetic relationship with your smartphone, and then now this device is also able to interact with other objects in the 3D physical space. So, aside from the traditional smart poster, URL, vCard kind of thing, there's you can enable a lot of interesting things offline with this type of technology. Art is a great example. Be able to interact with art in a way that you can be enhanced. You can enhance the experience by it. People can share different types of machine-to-machine communications between each other that would enable something that's as simple as little messages. So you can put a little text message onto the actual NFC tag itself, a little story, whatever fits in that small amount of space. The ability to incite emotional response through machine interaction is really kind of where it hasn't been explored yet. It's kind of artistic and very human type of expansion of this very kind of rudimentary machine-to-machine communication. It's interesting. These devices are not FDA approved. They're not medical devices, and so by essentially selling them, we are saying if you decide to put this in your body, that's on you to do the research. So beyond that, we really make sure that the whole point of starting Dangerous Things was to ensure safety. Before starting the company, people were sourcing automotive chips or industrial chips that had glass, which was thin, epoxy resins, which were toxic. The glass had aluminum and lead toxins in the glass, and so they were taking these chips and just putting them in unsafely. So really the focus of starting the company was to clean that up and make sure that the devices were safe, and then partner with piercers to make sure the process was safe. So when it comes to our track record, we've sold probably in the order of 3,000 to 4,000 chips so far, and the number of people reporting breakage has been 0. So we took the chip itself and put it through several tests. We did cytotoxicity test, which came out excellent. We did a crutch test, so we tried to we took the chip and put it into raw chicken, and then crushed it with a Newton force meter. And so the machine that we used was in the University of Washington, and the meter only went to 500 newtons. That was the maximum, and we maxed out the machine, and it still didn't break the chip. So robust durability-wise, the chip is very safe. There is in PET chips, there's a coating that usually goes on the glass called Parylene, or it's Biobond, and the purpose of this is anti-migration. So something that's in the body can move, it migrates. But the PET chips are coated with this stuff because the method of installation is very coarse. It's not very exact. So they'll just grab the scruff of the animal and just put it in and inject it, and not really being careful. So they have to add this coating to bond to it. So we leave the coating off. We don't have that coating to allow the chip to be removed easily or replaced. And so, when it comes to any kind of issue with having to remove it, we've made sure that removal is easy to do. I think these chips, they're more of a psychological change to the human identity than a physical one. Pacemakers and cochlear implants, those devices actually interact with the body. So I've been asked if I'm a cyborg, and I don't think so. I think people that have these other technologies where the machine is actually working with the body are much more cybernetic than me. But psychologically speaking, being able to have these devices in my body to the point where they're fully integrated both physically and mentally. I don't think about them, I just use them. It's part of my routine, it's a daily thing, and I don't have to manage them at all. I don't have to think, do I have my chips when I get up in the morning? I don't even think of them. So as part of my human identity, they definitely have enhanced my capabilities as a human being. When it comes to, drawing the line at going too far, I don't think there is a line there. That line is arbitrary. It's subjective. For me, that line would be, there's definitely a day coming where I may even have to make the choice between taking out a perfectly good working eye to replace it with an enhanced eye. So the line, the question is, do you want to do that? Is there a good reason to remove something that functions perfectly well and try to enhance it in some way? So for me, if I had the option to cut off my arm and have a robot arm that I could crush stuff, it was super strong, the questions that would come up would be, what about the sensation? Would I lose sensation? What would I lose and what would I gain? And if the losses are low and the gain is high, sure, I'll do that. But people have concerns that you could lose your humanity in some way to doing that. And I think I think that the body is really just a sport utility vehicle for my brain, and it's totally fine to upgrade it. I think there's going to always be people that don't want to have any kind of technology. Similar to there's a lot of people that don't want to have any piercings or tattoos or anything like that. But the difference, of course, between piercings and tattoos and implanted devices is function. So, when it comes to smartphone use, there used to be a segment of population, particularly older folks, that didn't want a smartphone. They didn't see any point in it, and they didn't really want it. But and there's still a very small number of people that don't have mobile telephones, and that's probably going to persist. There's always going to be some segment of population, but as far as kind of the majority of society, I can't say that there will ever be a majority of society that will have this particular kind of chip, but I think there will be a majority of society that will have some form of device, either NFC or something else that comes along. I think the when has a lot to do with what the advantage would be, what the use case would be, and that's hard to nail down. I know technologically it's totally possible to do some amazing things even today, or maybe in a couple years, but whether or not that becomes usable in society as a whole, that's the application side of things always lags behind the capability side. So because we can do something doesn't mean everybody wants to do it.
Okay, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hey there, students. Emil Grafter here. Starting a startup, particularly around technology, is always kind of adventurous. It's a lot of fun. And what's really great about NFC is that it's just now starting to kind of gain popularity, not just in mobile phones, but also in devices in cities, municipalities. It's kind of expanding everywhere. So the possibilities are growing, and I think it's a good idea to start playing around with it.